What's up everyone? We're back with another video. Just did one last week and now we're here again, so not bad. Just a reminder, I still have all that same stuff for sale basically, so if you're interested, still got it. So if you're wondering what it all is, there's an engine, turbos. I go through it all in the previous video, so if you're wondering some more information about all that stuff, it's all in the previous video. Literally the last one I posted 7 days ago. So in this video, kind of gonna basically just talk about some stuff, but I did a rear mount radiator on this car a few years ago, and since then, when I did the Coyote, I moved it back up into the front. So typically every winter I get a ton of questions on just random things, how I did it, how this was, how you bleed it, all that random nonsense. So I figured I would make another video and talk about kind of how I did it. And then this winter I've been seeing a lot of questions on why I ditched it. So we'll talk about that too. So it's kind of just going to be a video full of just talking about benefits of each. And there is benefits of each. So whether you're thinking of doing it or not, I hope this video helps you out. So let's get into it. So I just wanted to give a quick glass over of the current setup. So it's a Griffin radiator. I kind of stood here and looked at this whole configuration before it was assembled and imagined how I wanted it. And what you see is exactly how I wanted it. So the radiator I sized for it. If it could have been wider, I would have done it, but this is all the wider I could get in that particular height. But it is a dual pass, so you can see the inlet and the outlet are on the same side. And then this hose basically just runs over to my overflow or the fill tank. This one, same thing. And then same thing with this guy on top here for all you Coyote guys. I've had a few questions on that too. So the bigger one is the one on the top of the water pump, and that goes right there. This one here is on the top of the little filler neck deal. He goes right there. And this one here goes there. And this thing, I have no problems bleeding it out. I actually use a vacuum thing now for all you rear mount guys. If you do end up doing that, there's a little thing you can buy that goes on the top of here, and you can basically just pressurize and force water through everything. My dad did an antifreeze swap in his car, and he said it just was really finicky getting all the air out. So that's why we end up doing it with this, because it's really just not fun on a race car, especially if you take it apart frequently to try to do that stuff. And it is a mechanical water pump, so you have to do all that stuff with the engine running, and that's just not that fun. So that's basically how that is. And then have the big line here going to the top, and the one off the water pump right here going down below. So it's a relatively simple combination. So now we're under the back of the car, and we'll talk about the rear mount. The rear mount mounted, basically this bar, this is all a little different because it didn't have all the tubes and stuff here, but it was mounted back here by this bar and angled to about like right in where this shock was. It wasn't that far forward, but had a pretty decent angle on it. That was one thing that I did change. I put a little more angle on it just in the attempt to grab some more air. So that was really the only deal with that. But just kind of want to show you how I had mine in. Obviously now it's not like that. I just got my trans cooler and that's it. So things have definitely changed if you've watched that previous video. So now let's discuss some of the pros and cons. My rear mount radiator, it worked pretty good. I mean, it doesn't work as good as this one. And most situations it's probably not going to. If you're gonna do it, you need fans. I mean, not just fans, good fans. Like mine were, I want to say they were like 3,400 or 3,200 CFM, and I could have used a little more. So, because they're really, even like I tipped the radiator more and I changed all that stuff trying to get airflow, there's just not a ton of airflow underneath the car like that. Especially on this particular one, I mean, the thing is slammed right to the ground. So you just don't have a lot of airflow. So you absolutely need super good fans, whether you get brushless. I actually have the radiator for sale. It hasn't sold. It's kind of old and beat up, but it's got the fans on there and the shroud that I used. And on a hot day, like 80, 85 degrees, I could drive down the road at 55 and it would run like right at 200. So pretty good. I mean, it worked. You'd never really get any cooling unless you slowed down and did it for a little while, and you couldn't really go a whole lot faster than 55 or 60 because then it would just kind of go and keep going. This particular one, Coyotes run off head temperature, not water temp. So the head temperature usually runs like in the mid 170s, and the water temp is honestly like in the 150s. So it definitely runs super cool, and I'm gonna reconfigure the way the fans come on, maybe just to give it a little bit more temp than 150, but I'm super happy with that. I mean, it cools absolutely amazing. That is the pro of having it up front. It works incredibly well. But you can get pretty dang good success out of the back. You just have to have awesome fans. Another thing with it in the back, you can do it with a mechanical water pump, but it's a lot easier to bleed the air out and get the system all right with a electric water pump. So you can do the vacuum thing. I never tried it when I had it, but I had an electric water pump, so it was just kind of some dinking around to get it. You know, I'd jack the back of the car up, squeeze the lines, kind of just do some stuff, make sure you're continuing to add water as you're doing all that, and then you could jack the front up and crack your steam vents on an LS and bleed your air out that way. And normally after probably 15 minutes of screwing around with it, I could get it. Vacuum pump probably make that a whole lot easier. And if you're on a mechanical water pump, that would also solve that problem, because sometimes it's real hard to get it right with the engine running and watching the temp and kind of all that stuff that's going on, you know, in the heat of those moments, especially if it's a new build and you haven't even ran it yet, you know, that's a lot of kind of pressure on you. You're watching a lot of stuff at the same time, can get kind of hectic. So definitely look into the vacuum pump thing. Didn't cost a whole lot of money. It works really, really good. I had to replace the water pump on this. I used the original one. It was all messed up. It's a whole debacle, but drain the water out, put the vacuum thing on, put it right back in, good to go. Didn't have to do anything. So that was super nice. Another pro of having it in the back, if you're no prep, street race, stuff like that, the weight back there helps a lot. You're probably, you know, looking at 30, 40, maybe 50 pounds, depending on how big your radiator is. If you're doing it in the back, you should probably run a dual pass radiator. That's like mine here, where they're inlet and outlet on the same pass. That means it's kind of got to go through the radiator twice, basically. The other ones, they kind of just transition through it once. You know, you're covering some more surface area doing that for sure. But when it's got to wing around twice, I've talked to a lot of people and that stuff, they said that helped out quite a bit. So something to keep in mind if you're looking into it. But you need a big radiator, you need a thick radiator, and you just need a hell of a lot of fans, and you'll have good success. And then with the weight thing, if you're running on no prep, you know, you're moving weight where you want it. So it's never a bad idea to do that. I mean, nobody wants to physically add weight to the car. So if you can situate your setup with the weight where it needs to be, that's huge. I can tell firsthand when I had an aluminum engine in this car and we would go tooling around in the street, it would hold 32, 35 pounds of boost all day long. And then when I put the iron engine in, you could probably only run like 25 before you'd start spinning the tires. So that's kind of the thing that weight can do. You know, iron LS engine is a lot heavier. I mean, it added 100 pounds to the car and pretty much added just 100 right on the nose. And it made a huge difference as far as traction on the street goes. At the track, not really a whole deal. I was kind of expecting it to not wheelie so bad, but it still would. So maybe it was where the weight was. It's hard to really say on that. The radiator was also in the back, so I had some rear bias there, but it was, I believe it was like 53% overall, so not crazy heavy on the nose, not super even, all that stuff. But being that it wheelies so much, that's why these are out here. That's why this is way out here. That's why the radiator's in the front. I wanted everything back up front, so we can combat that wheelie. And I don't run a whole lot of no prep, so anything to fight the wheelie was what I was after. A con of the rear mount, we can talk about that for a little bit. It's kind of a pain to mount. I mean, it just is. And it's a lot of line. So like I run this rubber stuff. You know, this isn't anything fancy. It's literally just heater hose or whatever in like a 1-inch diameter. But there's a lot of failure points going from the front of your engine all the way to the back. I never had any problems with it. Everything worked really good, but it's just something I always kept in the back of my head. Like there's 20 feet of line or whatever, however long this thing is, going to the back and then coming back to the front. So kind of just weird, you know, something weird happens, you pop a hole in one, you got problems and you got big problems. So I didn't like that. I never lifted head with the LS or anything like that, so I don't know how all of that rubber hose would have responded. For sure you can use AN hose, it's just very, very expensive, especially in that amount of quantity. So that was kind of some of my thing with it. Like I said, you know, everyone's done it a million different ways, and some people have had good success, others not, but that was just how I did mine, and it did work. So but yeah, con, didn't like all the line there, not all that fun. Another con, it is a pain to bleed sometimes, just kind of how it is. You know, it's no fast process, not like this one. This one doesn't take very long to know that it's all good. That one kind of takes a little bit of messing around with, but I would say that's my two cons there for sure. You know, obviously you got to spend some good money on fans. This one's got really awesome fans on it anyway, just because I like to have good cooling ability. Also, when you have some screaming fans and they're laying under the car like that, it is a street sweeper. I mean, your car will get dirty for sure. I mean, I sucked so much grass up there, and if you drove it like on anything that was gravel, it was just blowing dust everywhere with the fans on. I mean, it'd make a mess in a freaking hurry. So that was one other thing. Obviously with it up front, tipped forward like this, don't really have that a whole lot. But yeah, that's kind of some of the stuff I got on the top of my head right now. I'll think about it a little bit more. I'm gonna kind of putz with this thing a little bit, and we'll check in a little bit. A couple more pros for you here. Space. I mean, if you got a lot of stuff going on in your engine bay, space, it's huge. Move the radiator to the back and you free up a ton of space. So, you know, if that's what you're like with mine, with the big single turbo right up in the center here, I mean, that was huge. That you didn't have to worry about the radiator, and you could still put an intercooler on there if you wanted to, like I had mine. So, and I had a water one and an air one, so you can kind of get away with either or and still have your big turbo in the center. Well, there's tons of people who put that same big turbo, you know, off to the one side or whatever, or, you know, new thing is kind of behind the shock towers there. But a lot of, obviously tons of different options, but, you know, depending on what you want your stuff to look like or where you want your weight, you can move the radiator to the rear and free up a ton of room. I kind of killed two birds with one stone. I fit my radiator here and I put my turbos way down here. So being with the cars that I've done and having this one, and it's basically on its second massive rendition and its third kind of just changing stuff, you know, you learn a lot over that time period of how you like things. And I've kind of always liked my turbos to be out of the way. So if you had to take the engine out or something, you don't really have to mess with the turbos a whole lot. And that's how this one is. I mean, if you got to pull the engine out, all you have to do is take the headers off, basically. Headers in the downpipe, but you can leave. If you see how this is kind of made, it's got a V-band right here. You can just pull that V-band and pull the one on the header, pop it all right off. And the turbos stay, the exhaust pipes can stay, kind of all that stuff can just stay. And then being with the radiator as far forward as it is, that doesn't have to come out either. So that worked out super good there. But as far as, you know, big single turbo, sometimes with the radiator there, you got to take the turbo off. With my radiator in the rear and the big single turbo, the thing could just stay there if I had to pull the engine or whatever. So sometimes you got to consider some of those options too. What are you looking, you know, how hard is it going to be? When I didn't have the channel back then, but I had the black car. That one, the turbo was basically right here. And the exhaust pipe went out that side. So it was turned sideways. But you had to take the turbo off to do anything on that thing. And it just wasn't that fun. And taking the turbo off itself, being where it was and how it was all done, it was just pretty hard. So I decided then and there that I didn't ever want to have to do that again. So that's hence why I did the center mount. And I wanted to try the rear mount radiator. So that's kind of how all that unfolded. And then now, you know, I wanted the turbos up front, down low, out of the way, because like I said, I don't like pulling them off. And then I could squeeze the radiator back up in here and still not have to really mess with that if you have to pull the engine. So as far as that stuff, that's just more my own personal preference of how I want to work on it and how easy or not easy it is to take apart, because it's a race car. You always have to take the dang thing apart. So a lot of different options there as far as that stuff goes. But like I said, it's really up to you. It'll work if you do it. And it's just, there's some consequences. Same thing with it up front. I mean, it's in the way. You got that going. If you don't need weight up there, it's weight up there. I mean, a lot of different stuff. Another thing to consider, I don't have anything of it, but basically how mine was is one of the hoses went from a tank in the rear right into the radiator, and then it fed to the front of the car on the opposite side of the radiator, and then it came back into the big tank. So you can do that setup, because I did, and it works, or you can do a little bit more like this setup here, where you have a tank here and you just kind of use it as bleeders and fill lines, and then you just run one side of your engine to the one side of the radiator and the other to the other, and just add, you know, a big hose like an 8 or a 10 that goes up to a tank like this guy. So that's always another option too. Actually, I think that's kind of the preferred way to do it, but like I said, mine worked the way that I had done it. So keep that in mind if you're messing around with it. Other than that, if you're gonna do it, fans, hands down, 1000%, that's what you need, really good fans. Probably get brushless ones. And to be honest, maybe you could even run something like this. This is just a Summit kit, but I think these are 3400 CFM and they rip. So you just need definitely over 3000 CFM to make it work. I had 1800 on it originally, and it just didn't do it. You would just creep temp constantly. You'd drive around and hang at 180, and the next thing you know, you're at 190, and next thing you know, you're at 200, and next thing you know, you're at 210. It was just an endless train. And then I switched them when we went to Florida to the big fans, and I actually popped a relay, and the thing was at 240 degrees, like that, before you could even freaking blink. And we were just in traffic, just idling. And, you know, with the good fans and stuff, the thing doesn't even warm up when you're just idling around. But yeah, with no fans, she'll get hot. I mean, we were driving, you know, going 20, 30, but without the fans, it was basically worthless. So keep that in mind. Good electrical system, everything right. So just some stuff to consider if you're thinking about doing the rear mount. I liked it. Would I do it again? Probably not, because I really like it right here, and all those failure points was just something that constantly made me nervous, and it just does cool better up front. But if you were looking for rear bias and you wanted to put really nice hose on, you absolutely can. Put some stupid good fans on there, and you'll probably be just fine. So that's really all I got for that. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. We're coming around into the springtime, so hopefully this thing will make its migration either back to Dad's shop or to mine. I don't really know what I'm gonna do yet, but got some sensors to wire in and just kind of give the whole thing a general once over. Check all the bolts. I am gonna rescale, so we're gonna rescale, work on suspension a little bit, kind of math out the geometry, and really try to keep the front wheels down so we can go fast. So that's what I got on the menu for this thing, and then obviously go out and test. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and we will see you next time.